Thank you, Michael. It was there from the beginning, there in the firmament, shining, twinkling brightly in the dark. Before there were even eyes to see it, it was there in the firmament. The first animals came, and maybe they looked up, but they didn't notice how unique it was. Maybe a little bear looked up, a minor Ursa, and saw it, and didn't know what that little bear was seeing. The Ojibwe Anishinaabe came. The Osheti Shakoween came. And they did notice there was something special, something marvelous about the heavens. The Lakota called it Wichapi Owanzala, the star that sits still. The Vikings called it the guiding star. Shakespeare called it the constant northern star. No matter how dark it got, it was there, reflected in the waters of the Mississippi, the waters of Bede-Makaska, the waters of Mille Lacs and the Boundary Waters. It stayed constant as the waters rose and fell, flowed and changed, waves came and went, ever changing. Heraclitus said, the ancient Greek philosopher said, you can never step in the same river twice because you will have changed and the river will have changed. And Minnesota today is not the Minnesota from the days of that original Minnesota miracle. Minnesota has changed. Now, our destination has remained constant. A thriving Minnesota, a prosperous Minnesota, an inclusive and equitable and welcoming Minnesota. This will forever be the shining light of Minnesota State. But our route to the star has been fluid, ever-changing. Minnesota has a dynamic population with new Minnesotans adding energy and new ideas and new opportunities, a beautiful diversity that makes us strong. Minnesota's economy has become increasingly dynamic and fluid and flexible and diverse. So for Minnesota State, we bring new and responsive programs calibrated to the changing needs of our many partners, some of whom are here today, the businesses, the manufacturers, the schools, the nonprofits, the healthcare providers, and the communities we all serve. The star is what we promise. Equity 2030. So it shouldn't matter if you're the first in your family to go to college. It shouldn't matter if you grew up in a poor household. It shouldn't matter if you're a person of color. The pathway to your hopes and dreams should be the same. And we call this Equity 2030, and it's a commitment on the part of our board, on the part of our presidents, on the part of our bargaining unit leaders, on the part of our campuses, to close any gap that there might be between those who are first in their family to go to college and those whose families have gone to college for 5 generations, from those who grow up in poor families and from those who grow up in the richest families, for those who are students of color or those who are white. None of that should matter in Minnesota State's colleges and universities, and that's what Equity 2030 is all about. And if we don't do it, if Minnesota State does not do this, who will? Do you realize, those of you, the Minnesota State folks know this, but for those of you who are guests here, did you know that the Minnesota State system, the number of students of color served by the Minnesota State colleges and universities, that number is larger than the total number of students served by the University of Minnesota system and all the private colleges in Minnesota. Minnesota State students of color outnumber the entire enrollment of everybody else in Minnesota. So if we don't do it, who's going to do it? We're the ones to do it. Well, right. We are the ones to do it. And we're the ones to do affordability. We're the ones to make college the hopes and dreams within reach. And I couldn't be more grateful to Representative Pawlowski, who's here today, more grateful to Senator Fateh, who chairs the Senate Higher Ed Committee, and their committees and all the legislators who worked on this. I cannot thank you enough for freezing tuition for 2 years. I cannot thank you enough for the North Star Promise, which says that if your family earns less than $80,000, college is free. That's... So this North Star Promise, it's an amazing thing, an amazing thing. And we're working hard to complement it with the Minnesota State Promise. And the Minnesota State Promise builds on the North Star Promise and makes college even more affordable by extending that promise, working with our communities, working with our foundations, so that 80,000 may not be the cutoff, that the cutoff is higher and higher, and so everybody has a shot at higher education. And I thank the legislature for supporting basic needs. You know, the students we serve today, that changing dynamic Minnesota, the students we serve today are not like the students we served when this wonderful institution was founded some 51 years ago. Minnesota's changing. And we have a duty, we have an obligation to serve the basic needs of our students, to ensure that food scarcity, hunger, mental health access none of that is a barrier to the ability to come to one of our colleges and universities and be a student and be a part of the dream of participating in Minnesota's economy. So I want to thank all the legislators, past and present. We have many past and present legislators. 3 of them serve on our Board of Trustees. I want to thank them for everything they've done to get us to this point. I want to thank the legislators who are watching. Thank you for everything you've done to get us to this point. Minnesota's prosperity relies on this. Opening up pathways for everybody to participate. That's that guiding star. The waters are the journey that we take, changing and fluid. You know, the land here in Minnesota was always fertile and plentiful, well shepherded then and now by the first peoples of Minnesota. The Mississippi River was the route to Minnesota's second and third wave of prosperity. First, the lumber that floated down that river. And as the, carpentry lab around us here, all this woodworking reminds us that wood, was an important first thing in Minnesota's establishment, its economy. And then later, milling, the wonderful fertile land that produced the wonderful grain that fed the world. All of that was Minnesota. The new waterways are digital, high-tech, fluid pathways, no need to portage. So NextGen, this project we're working on so that every student holds in the palm of their hand the tools that they need to navigate the complexities of higher ed. And they can what if, and they can change, and they can grow, and they can make other choices, and navigate their way through as efficiently as possible. We call that NextGen. The power of the future in the palms of their hands. There's room for disagreement. I love peaceful protest. My favorite days on college campuses was when there was active debate and disagreement, as we have today. I think it's great. It's great. And honestly, in this world, if we can't model how to disagree, have discussions and debates in a peaceful, civil, respectful way, as we see today, right here, if we can't do that, what hope is there for this world full of hate, full of violence, and full of division? Higher ed has to be the beacon of how to have these debates and discussions in a way that in the end we can shake hands, we can have good solutions, and we can move on. Yeah. I'm going to put in a plug here. If you want to see democracy in action, we got it in, as the governor said, we have it in action today at Hennepin Tech. If you, at the end of November, come down to Winona, watch the model legislature in action, and see young people learn how democracy works. And a year from now, go to Metro State and watch the Twin Cities folks make democracy work. Right. I'm sure they're cheering for the model legislature. That's awesome. Things like this are not easy. You know, Devinder Malhotra, my predecessor, he used to talk about Equity 2030 as our moonshot, and he wasn't wrong about that. To paraphrase John F. Kennedy, we choose to journey to the North Star, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Because our goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because our challenge is one we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. That's what Equity 2030 represents. That's what our system represents. That's what affordability represents. That's what serving basic needs represents. We are unwilling to postpone it. We are going to do this. In fulfilling the hopes and dreams of our students, we build Minnesota's workforce. As students pursue it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. As students pursue their hopes and dreams, they pour the foundation for Minnesota's future. Them pursuing their hopes and dreams. They're rational actors. They're making choices that will be the future of Minnesota and its prosperity. Hopers and dreamers, hard workers, gritty overcomers of adversity. The more you know our students, the more you know the future of Minnesota is secure. Anybody that works on a campus knows this. And for those of you who don't get to work with today's students, you're missing out because they're amazing. They're amazing. They are so smart. They are so determined. And they are going to build a bright and great future for Minnesota. And we, all of us that work in Minnesota State, we are blessed. We are blessed to work with them. You know, it's all around us, right? The carpentry students who built these tiny homes, the culinary students back there that are preparing the meal we're about to enjoy, the plumbing that's coming in next semester, is that right? Or next year, we're going to have plumbing in here. So these things actually will have running water at that point, I guess. It's good to have in a tiny home. Overwhelmingly, our system prepares Minnesota to prosper. The colleges and universities of Minnesota State prepare nearly half of Minnesota's teachers and half of Minnesota's business people and half of its agricultural workers. We prepare 60% of Minnesota's nurses. We prepare more than 2/3 of Minnesota's tradespeople. We prepare 90% of Minnesota's peace officers and mechanics and manufacturing employees. We are Minnesota's workforce. We are that workforce. We build that workforce, and we are that workforce, and Minnesota needs every one of those graduates for Minnesota to be what Minnesota dreams of becoming. We do this through nearly 4,000 different programs across Minnesota State designed to serve the local needs of the businesses and industries of the region they serve. That's why our system is as diverse as it is. Each campus is so well attuned to what the needs of its community are and serving those needs beautifully. And by that, serving the region, serving the state, serving the world. Our system has an $8 billion with a B, an $8 billion impact every year on the Minnesota economy. And my aside to the legislators who are here, we think we're a pretty good investment. And any legislators that are sitting here that want to work on getting us back to that 2/3, 1/3 statutory requirement, we'd love that. And we do this by serving first-gen students. We do this by serving low-income students. We do this by serving the most diverse students in Minnesota. Our mission is not to take students from the 5th quintile, the top quintile, and keep them safely there. No, no, no. Our mission is to take students from the 1st quintile and the 2nd quintile and rise them up into the prosperity that Minnesota can offer them. Our mission is to take students and their families up, up, up toward that northern star. Our students largely come from Minnesota. Our graduates stay and work in Minnesota. I believe in what we do. My spouse, sitting here, this is Kelly, everybody, she's a graduate of our system. My daughter, Katie, who's standing over there, is a 2-time graduate of our system, as is her husband. And that baby that my daughter is holding is seriously interested in the carpentry program at Hennepin Tech. Believe she's very interested. Intrigued, I should say. So I really believe, and as was mentioned, I myself was a student once upon a time at Hennepin Tech. So we believe in what this system does because it's allowed our family to prosper. To my fellow Minnesotans, we stand ready. This amazing faculty, this amazing group of frontline workers, these amazing folks who have built all this, bring their best every day. I get to stand here and make speeches, but they do the work, world-class work. The board knows this, and the board is fully behind this future path for Minnesota State. To my Minnesota State colleagues, Minnesota has given us much. Just this past time, a historic investment in us. And Minnesota is looking on to us to deliver on Minnesota's hopes and dreams. That's the deal. They invest in us like they have, and what they ask in return is, keep Minnesota strong, keep Minnesota prosperous, lift us up to that northern star. It's a kind of a miracle that that star never changes. It's a kind of a miracle that the waters always change. Minnesota's been a miracle before, and it'll be a miracle again. A place that's constant through equity, through inclusion, through prosperity, through intergenerational wealth for everyone. A place that's always changing, always improving. The Minnesota marvel. Alongside me here is a statement of our commitment to Minnesota, a pledge to raise private money to match the workforce development investment that Minnesota, the legislature, has made in Minnesota state colleges and universities. Let's pledge here and now, all of us, to raise the funds, $13.5 million, to match the investment that the legislature has made in us, to match it so that we continue to develop the strongest workforce in the nation and the world. Our awesome partners are committed. Our board is committed. Our campuses are committed. Let's showcase our collective commitment by signing on to Minnesota's future prosperity. Polaris beckons us. The rivers and the lakes invite us. Let's set our canoe in the water and follow that North Star to our destiny. It's our star, our water, our state, our future. Let's go. All right, who's up next? Go ahead. You got one? So what's happening now is anybody that wants to sign this thing, pledging to Minnesota's prosperity, come up and put your John Hancock on there. Thank you.